One thing that the storms of life reveal is just where disaster is imminent. And today we're looking at the imminent disaster of the falling chicken coop. So we've had a lot of rain over the course of the last week. I think a lot of folks in this local area have. Kentucky has just been hit by one rain after another. There have even been a couple of really big storms. We had clear skies just 2 days ago, and suddenly, out of nowhere, a tornado warning just south of us. So we had to watch a tornado go by. And all of that has forced us to reevaluate and take a closer look at some things here in the garden, the biggest one being the chicken coop. Y'all can go back and watch the old videos of me putting this chicken coop together, and it got built into the weird structure that it is because I worked without any specific plans. And the problem that I created was that I built an imbalanced structure. So when we built this chicken coop, it was heading into winter. And one of the things we were thinking about as we built it is we wanted the chickens to have some protection, not only from the snow and the ice that falls in the wintertime, but also from the sun during the summertime. So the plan was always to build an extended run off of this coop that would allow them shaded areas and protected areas that would always remain dry and covered up from the sun. And that's how it ended up so cantilevered here on the top portion. So the roof is stuck out a little further than it should be, which imbalances the structure. Then this was our first construction project here on this new homestead. We'd never built anything on top of this soil, and it turns out while this clay is pretty heavy and pretty thick, when it gets wet, it gets loose. And every time it has rained since we built this thing, it tends to lean over a little bit more. So the building is now noticeably leaning away from us here in the video. You can see how it's almost falling over. And that's because we never got around to building the rest of the run. So this cantilever was supposed to have supports up underneath these corners, which would have caught the weight of the building and kept it from pulling it off of its foundational supports. So that's what we're going to be addressing today. We want to assess just how far off we've gotten and what we're going to do to fix it. And you might notice that I haven't articulated exactly what I'm going to do to correct the problem here, and that's because I'm not really sure. I know what tools I have available. I have some basic idea of how this can be righted, and I'm just going to try to piece this together one step at a time. The first thing it seems important to do is to know just how out of level everything is. It's actually out of level in two different directions, and the best tool I have available to easily determine what that measurement is a level. So I can measure how far out of alignment it is by using a basic bubble level. The idea is to mount the level on the building so that it is showing center bubble. So that the bubble is right in position where it should be so that the level is level with the ground. Now, the reason we need to do this is we can't measure up from the ground itself. The ground is definitely not level, and any measurements we take up to the bottom of the building won't give us any useful information. But the building was constructed initially on level, so it should still be level, and if it's not, then we should be able to measure up to a level line and see how far off level it is. So the basic idea you guys can see is to get a level up on here to know where level should be. Because the building was built relatively level, we can now measure from top or bottom and determine just how far out of level it's gotten. And this isn't going to give me a perfect measurement, because to do that I'd have to measure from the corners of the roof line. And since the roof line was never level to begin with, it's going to be impossible to tell how far it's shifted. But I can tell how far the wall has shifted by extending the level lines out to the edges of the building. And then measuring that edge, I can see how much longer or shorter it is on one side than the other. So this side of the building, meaning the building's level in this direction, is only off by about 1/4 of an inch. May not seem significant, but look at the length of the roof, and that's a long distance for a 1/4 inch change in height. So we are significantly off level front to back for the entire building, even though this wall, it's not really that significant a difference. Measuring the longer side of the building, I'll get an even better idea of just how far the entire building is out of alignment. We can't measure all the way out to the roof line here either, but the longer side does give us a much closer approximation of how far out of alignment we are. 41 1/4. $40 1/2. So we're 3/4 of an inch off along this length of the long edge of the building. So there is some good news about those measurements. 3/4 of an inch is not that much lift to put on the opposite end of the building to get it leveled again. And definitely 1/4 of an inch is really not all that. I was concerned that we wouldn't have bottle jacks or jacks that were strong enough to be able to apply enough pressure to right the building before we try to brace it up. That's very encouraging. It's actually so close that I may not even try very hard to level it up. If it doesn't immediately come back into position, we'll probably just brace it up to keep it from falling over. There's plenty of different types of jacks you could use to do a lift like this. And bottle jack's probably the best. That's hydraulic, so you're going to get a 1-to-1 lifting ratio there. Very effective. I don't have a bottle jack immediately available. And just like any true homesteader, we're going to try to solve this problem with what we have on hand. What I do have is a regular scissor jack from the pickup truck, so that's what we're going to use. Let's get that thing in here and see if we can get the building lifted. So on this initial attempt to lift, what I'm seeing is that all I'm doing is creating a separation here. We were off on this side by about 1/4 of an inch, and you can see now the bubble is shifted slightly. Let's take a look at the long side though. This is where we had the most deviation, about 3/4 of an inch, and it looks like we've Hold that bubble back around closer to where it should be. So you can see now our bubble's a little bit off. We'll take some quick measurements and just see how much of a correction we made. So I can definitely see the difference I've created here on this side, just resetting this level and then extending the line out to the edge of the building. Here's our first mark, and here's our second mark after we've raised everything. Let's take a look at the other side. And we see on the other side, everything is reversed, right? So our first mark is on top, and our second mark is now on the bottom. So that's a pretty significant difference. I'm going to measure these up from the bottom of the building and see what we get. And once we have the building jacked up, the rest of this is pretty easy. I needed some way to support the posts so that they weren't pushed down into this mud. And these are just temporary. When we come back to build the rest of the run around here, I'll put some permanent posts in. These landscaping posts were technically supposed to support our trellises in the garden. So we still have 2 garden beds that were supposed to get trellises. We haven't built those yet, and we can replace those later. If you all remember, our garden is a little bit stunted right now with the hot compost. So it hasn't started growing, and so the need for the trellises doesn't exist at the moment. So we'll replace those later. The basic idea was to try to get this project done with what we had on hand. We also used the jack from the truck rather than going out and figuring out the right, correct, or appropriate jack to use. We used scrap wood as blocks to hold everything up. And we already had the cinder blocks on site as well. Those are leftovers from the construction of the home as far as I know. So like true homesteaders, we solved the problem with what we had on hand. So we're able to jack that up and provide some supports. I supported each corner of the roof and then an additional support under that front lip of the coop. And that was the area where most of the weight was focusing. So that extra support should shift the balance back into the center of the building. And so that's going to get us back underneath here where the chickens are, back underneath the center of the coop. And as you can see, we've managed to maintain our level. So we jacked it up, got everything leveled back to this point, put our supports in, took the jack out, and everything has maintained its level condition. Took a little ingenuity. We used several of these levels in order to make sure we understood what we were correcting. But all in all, pretty straightforward repair. So we had a structural problem that we had to design a solution for, and we were able to put that together. And homesteading is really all about solving structural problems. The first and foremost is the one for your own food, your own survival. There are structural problems in the way that the systems of the world are designed to provide that food. You'll see some of that breakdown taking place right now. Even the United Nations is commenting on what they expect to see happen in the near future with food, and it's not a pretty picture. We've already got problems with the fuel supply. So although everyone's making adjustments to account for the lack of fuel flowing through the strait, the price of fuel is not being adjusted. So we're still seeing high prices at the pumps, hence our reasoning for not wanting to leave the house and go find additional resources, rather taking advantage of what's on site. So as food becomes a little bit more pricey and a little bit more scarce, I don't know if you're aware of this, but 30% of the wheat crop has already been declared a lost cause. They're simply not going to harvest it. The wheat crop was already 20% smaller than it was expected to be, 20% smaller than it was last year. And now 30% of that is not harvestable already, and that's before they actually get to harvest time. So things are going to get a little bit tight. And as those things get tight, the folks that have gone out and provided for some of their own food by putting in a garden are the ones who are going to not really feel the pinch quite so much. And that's really why we're out here. That's what the homesteading is all about. That's why we take the time to solve our own problems. If you can solve your own food problem, you're going to be much better off. At least it's in your hands when things go wrong. Not everything you design is going to be perfect. This chicken coop certainly isn't. But we can make small adjustments to it as we go to keep it operational and to keep it producing food as well. We do hope that as you see videos like this and you understand why we would take the time and put forth the effort to do our own work, you'll begin to see your own need to return to the land, return to labor, and return to life. We want to be an encouragement to you to help you on that journey that's going to restore your food security. So y'all be sure to like and subscribe. If there's anything you're facing on your homestead journey that's got you stymied and you're not sure what to do about it, tell us all about it in the comments. I can't promise that I'll know what to do or have a solution for you, but maybe we can point you in the right direction. We'd love to help you out if we can. We'll see you next time.